I would like you all to please be seated. Before we proceed to the negotiation session, I would like to inform you all that if you could turn off your electronic devices so that it doesn't interrupt with the sessions during the session. I would now like to call upon my colleague to give out the housekeeping rules.
Welcome everyone to the final round of the APIIT Law School International Negotiation Competition 2025. My name is Prabhani Senanayaka and I'll be your session supervisor for this round, and my assistant session supervisor will be Rakib Zawahir. First of all, congratulations to both the teams for making it thus far. And before we proceed, I'd like to draw your attention to a few housekeeping rules. Teams are reminded that we will have a total of 75 minutes for their negotiation. The participants shall be given a reminder for the final 5 minutes of the negotiation session by displaying a yellow placard at the end of the session with a red placard. This will be followed by a 15-minute scoring session. A feedback session of 15 minutes will be provided after the scoring is completed. This feedback will not include the scores awarded nor declare who won the round. A break, a maximum of 5 minutes, can be called by each team. The timing of the session will not be paused during the break. The party that requested the break is permitted to exit the room accompanied by the assistant session supervisor. Meanwhile, the opposing party will stay within the competition room and not allowed to be communicated with each other. Kindly ensure that you have reviewed the extended rules and guidelines that have already been provided by ALSINC 2025. Please note that no person shall give advice, assistance, or instructions to, or communicate or attempt to communicate with any of the participants from the competing teams during the negotiation session. I will now pass it to the teams and then start the timer as and when one party commences. Best of luck to both of you.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I am Jordan Singh, and before we move on to our opening remarks, I think it would be best to have a quick round of introductions just to reacquaint ourselves with everyone. So, like I said, I am Jordan Singh, and I'm here as the Senior Counsel for HelioWave. Please feel free to refer to me as Jordan throughout this session.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Morgan. Please feel free to call me Alex. I'm the Vice President for Global Markets at HelioWave, and I want to confirm that I have the full authority to settle at today's negotiation.
Good morning to everyone here. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Taylor Zoe, Director of Project Sunlight, representing Virelia Solar Development Corporation for this negotiation. We hope for a very productive session, and I'd like to warrant that I have the adequate authority to settle today.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for requesting us or inviting us here today. I am Casey Ndlovu, and you may call me as Casey. I am the legal advisor to the Ministry of Energy of Virelia, and I am here in advisory capacity to VSDC, that is Virelia State Development Corporation, and where I will be assisting wherever necessary. However, the full authority to settle today rests solely with VSDC here.
It's so great to see everyone again. What I propose is that we begin with our opening remarks, but before that, I do have a few ground rules that I would like to propose, and I think it will really benefit us moving forward. Firstly, I want to acknowledge any cultural differences that we may potentially have, and because English may not be our first language, I really suggest that we speak slowly and clearly and avoid any interruptions. And if at any point, whatever that myself or my client says is unclear, please feel free to clarify it and we'll be more than happy to help you out there. Secondly, I want to emphasize the importance of confidentiality. I really think today's negotiation should be subjected to a very strict standard of confidentiality, and this will really help the parties to share openly today, knowing that nothing will leave the room. I want to make a quick note that today's session is a 75-minute session, and we have the option of taking a 5-minute break or a cross caucus if needed. And I will act as a timekeeper, giving you periodic reminders at crucial time junctures, just so we use this 75 minutes to the best of our abilities. Having said all of that, I would really like to see if you have anything to propose on that regard.
Yes, thank you, Jordan, for that elaborative explanation and for setting up the ground rule. I see that we are already here in an agreement because we do have a similar ground rules as well. We just have 2 more or maybe 3 to add to it. Similarly, we do acknowledge that we do have our cultural references, and for it we need to speak slowly so that we do not have any misunderstanding or a miscommunication between us, and we leave this room today with a clear picture of what's happening. With that said, I want to say that there would be no talking over each other. We would wait till each one of us speaks, and all the agreements pending would be tentative and pending agreement on the whole, and that after this session, we would be sharing a doc at the end on the tentative agreements that we've reached. And lastly, when we set off the agenda, it would be helpful and productive that we stick to the agenda, even though the agenda is flexible. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I think that sounds really good, really nice. So if that's all there is, we can get on with the proceedings today. It's customary for the requesting party to begin, so if that's all right with you, you can.
Yes, thank you, Jordan. First, I really want to take the time to appreciate Taylor and Casey for taking the time to be here today's negotiation, and I'm hopeful and I can assure you that today's negotiation, I will do everything I can from my end to make sure that today's negotiation goes well. Just wanted to give a background as to what HelioWave really is. At HelioWave, we don't see this project as just megawatts and milestones. We see faces, families, and futures. Electricity isn't simply a utility. It is often the lifetime of a community. Without it, children study under candlelights, clinic struggles to refrigerate vaccines, and local businesses remain shackled in the dark. With it, just hope switches on like a single lamp illuminates a room and the people in it. So when we entered this partnership, we had a vision of expanding our reach in terms of renewable energy access. I want you to know that this vision always included you, not only as a reliable business partners, but partners that we wanted to show a united front with, to the people of Virelia. Yes, we are facing delays, but for us, delays do not mean defeat. Just as the little child may preserve steadfast in their studies with a single light bulb, we at HelioWave remain steadfast in our commitment to Virelia and to you, Taylor. Taylor, you will always be a higher priority for us. But during this negotiation, I urge us not to forget that the ultimate stakeholders in this project are not us, seated at this table, but the people of Virelia. They are the families who have lived for too long in fear of the dark, waiting for a simple relief of a light bulb that stays on after sunset. To me, we owe it to the people of Virelia Nation to see this project through, because the measures of our success will not be in the numbers we trade today, but in the villages we illuminate in the months to come. Taylor, I hope that through this negotiation that we are able to create mutual value and to take a meaningful step towards accomplishing a goal that we both share. But before we go into details, I want to acknowledge my counsel here, Jordan Singh. She has guided us to this table in good faith, and I would like to pass it on to her to hear her perspective.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on what brings you to the table today, Alex. First and foremost, just as Alex has mentioned, I want to express how pleased we are to be here, and I want to let you know that we really appreciate you, Taylor, and Casey coming down here for this very pivotal negotiation. Just to start off, I want to elaborate on what my role here as counsel is. I will be here to assist HelioWave in advancing their interest at the table, and I will be here to assist with any contractual technicalities wherever I'm needed. However, all authority to make any decisions on behalf of HelioWave lies with Alex, and I will be here only to make sure that whatever is put forward is feasible with HelioWave's objectives. Now, Taylor, Casey, I have worked with HelioWave for a very long time, and I can confidently assure you that their partnership with VSDC is of great importance to them. This partnership really signifies a long-term, mutually beneficial commitment to strategic growth, and that is exactly what we want reflected in today's negotiation. Casey, I'm sure you'd understand when I say this. In law, we see a lot of things in terms of black and white, but the way we see it, negotiation really helps us transcend beyond this binary nature of black and white and enter into common ground, creating solutions that benefit both of us. So when Alex approached me with his concerns, I strongly advised him to consider negotiation and pursue negotiation as our preferred path. After all, whatever that can be discussed through proactive discussion need not go into litigation. Having said that, I also want to make a note that I want to make it clear, rather, that Alex does not want to accept any contractual liabilities today. Having said that, I want to emphasize that we are here not only to put forward our interests at the table, but also to hear your concerns, so that we can find a way forward that benefits both of us. We're here today because it's not HelioWave versus VSDC, but rather HelioWave and VSDC versus the problem that we have. For everyone's benefit, let me briefly outline Alex's and HelioWave's interests at today's negotiation. Primarily, it's to set a new delivery date, and secondly, it is to address the reputational concerns of both parties. These interests reflect an ideal agenda in Alex's perspective, which would be firstly delivery and secondly reputation. But of course, before we get on to setting a common agenda, we'd really like to hear your perspective on what brings you here today.
So I'd just like to start by saying good morning again, and thank you so much for inviting us to negotiation. I also just want to mention that Ruritania is absolutely beautiful and a model energy utopia that we aim to make in Virelia. Just on the way here, I saw multiple wind farms, and even the most remote houses had solar panels. And in the Kingdom of Virelia, this is exactly what we envision for our rural communities as well, which is why Project Sunlight was conceptualized and why VSDC was created in 2019. At the core of our principles, we want our people to have clean and affordable electricity, and due to your vast experience with a multitude of clients all across Africa and Southeast Asia, your global acclaim reached our ears, and we realized that you are the key to our solutions. So we are eager to be here at the table and negotiate with you so we can provide our people with the energy they deserve. And imagine that little girl in a small village house now being able to study at night with the light on. But with all that being said, while we understand that these are quite idealistic, utopian talks, I think the intention we have here to make sure that this ideal becomes reality is to make sure that we follow a strict timeline. So I'd just like to start by setting our exact intention, which is that we hope or we wish to walk away from the table with having an agreement on the fact that the delivery would be done by September of 2024. To exactly outline how we envision the structure of the negotiation, I think Casey can take over.
Thank you for that. And Alex, we do agree that delays do not mean defeat, and hence here we are for the session. And before I set up the agenda or before I say what our main priorities are, I do understand that why we sit here today in this room is to work towards solutions that are mutually beneficial, practical, and also fair. Because today is about the people and not about us. So why don't we finish this session today so that we can walk away with offers or with plans that are creative and quickly and maybe also quietly. Now, saying all of that, our priority today is again about the timeline, as Taylor said. We would want the delivery to be done before 30th of September of 2024. Now that would be our first priority. And secondly, again, ours would be the same as yours. It's about to deal with the reputational damage or to see how we can handle the media and the PR, because we do see that both of us have the same kind of pressure from the media. And lastly, maybe we can discuss about the liquidated damages, about the calculation, whether there is space for the waiving of the liquidated damage or maybe a reduction in it. How does this sound to you?
What I'm hearing from you is that you do want to discuss delivery just like we do and reputation. We see a lot of common ground there. So we would also be happy to include liquidated damages in the agenda today, because we understand that that's one of your biggest concerns coming here. So I think we can agree on a common agenda as delivery, reputation, and liquidated damages. Does that sound okay with you?
That sounds
Alright,
amenable,
perfect.
yes.
So maybe you can start, Alex.
Yes. Taylor, I know, as I mentioned in my opening remarks as well, in terms of the delay, and I do stand by that delay does not mean defeat for us. In terms of delaying the raw material, in delivering the system, there was a lot of external environment issues that caused interference into our supply chain, which resulted in us not being able to provide the system on time. So due to that, I would like to know as what is your biggest concerns in terms of business perspective as well as a political perspective. But I want to assure you that this delivery of the system could be done. It's just in no way am I ready to accept or be looked bad in terms of a public perception.
Certainly. So we have similar concerns politically and regarding commercially. So our main concern here as of now is that, first of all, in the informal business briefings that I attended, I found out about the East Asian polysilicon factory fire. But of course, this was not notified to us directly by HelioWave, and rather it was through informal means. So that is one of our concerns. I think the way to phrase that question for us would be, why did you not decide to invoke force majeure under the contract? So since such a situation has happened, we do have questions about the veracity of the fire, how much it affected your stocks, and how we can now meet the common ground to get the delivery back on time. But yes, I do want to hear about why was force majeure not invoked, and which exactly was the factory where the polysilicon fire happened. What was the situation with that?
That's actually a valid concern, and being very transparent with you, we did hope that this delay would be short-lived. So that is the main reason as to why we didn't invoke the force majeure clauses. And now, since we have an idea that it's not going to be short-lived, I'm here to reduce the negative impact that this issue has caused. And in terms of the fire, in terms of specifics, it actually primarily the fire took place in the polysilicon facility in East Asia, which was earlier of the year, January of 2024, which caused a disruption in terms of the supply chain. This delivery was very important as it was supplying the raw materials to our manufacturing partners, which they will be providing it to us. And due to the fire, our manufacturing partners were not able to receive these raw materials. Due to that, we were not able to make the system deliver the system on time. But as it is not within our control, I understand the concern that is brought by you. But I think, Tisuni, you want to elaborate on this a bit?
Can I just ask a few follow-up questions to that? I'll let you get to your point. I'm so sorry for interrupting. Yeah. So I think my next question or my follow-up for that, and I sort of asked it in the initial question as well, was why weren't we formally notified about the fire, and we found out through informal industry briefings. Even if you decide that force majeure shouldn't be invoked, which I understand that commercially you believed it would be a short delay, it would have been, I believe, good for our relationship if we would have understood about the fire from your mouth.
Yeah, I really understand your concern on that regard. So ideally, just like what Alex did mention, we didn't formally invoke the force majeure clause because at that point, we did not think that this delay was going to be something permanent and that's going to continue on for a really long time. We really did, with the information that we had from the East Asian supplier, the East Asian facility, with that information, we really did believe that this fire and the impacts from the fire was going to be short-lived, and that is mainly to be purely transparent. That is really why we didn't invoke the force majeure clause. That is why we did not let you formally know as well, because we too believe that this is not going to be a negative impact. I hope that pacifies your concern in that regard.
Right. Thank you, Jordan and Alex, for that. We do understand your reasons as to why not invoking the clause would be beneficial for both of us. But now that we are here in this session today, as of August of 2024, we see that there has been a 5-month delay. It was supposed to be done by 31st of March of 2024, and now that we are here in August, it's 5 months. Jordan, wouldn't you agree that it would be much more mutually beneficial if we indeed invoked the force majeure clause? In that way, it can result in waiving off the liquidated damages, and maybe we can have further sessions in reducing the liquidated damages cost in itself, because now we will be answerable to the Auditor General of Virelia, wherein we can give them a proper answer as to why there has been a reduction in the liquidated damages, because as we said earlier, we do want the delivery to be done within the timeline. And that said, Alex, you did mention that the polysilicon facility was a direct partner, but we do want, we are confused, or maybe we do have a question as to why other contractors or other subcontractors weren't looked upon, because as you said, people are the priority here, people are the future, and electricity is important. And I believe we had made it clear in the contract that time is the essence. We do want it to be done by the end of September, or maybe in the contract by that of March, because what we wanted is electricity for the people. Now that said, I pose 2 questions. Firstly, wouldn't it be better if we invoke the force majeure clause? And secondly, why weren't alternative sources looked upon?
As mentioned earlier, in terms of why we didn't invoke the force majeure clause, was we expected to be short-lived. As my counsel mentioned, we didn't expect it to be permanent, and we want to ensure that the delivery is made. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, I want to see the communities benefit from this, and since we assumed it would be short-lived, we thought, as per the information that was given, as it is an issue that is done by the East Market, they informed us and assured us that it is short-lived. So we were also limited in terms of the lack of information, since we also wanted to ensure that the delivery was done. But Taylor, if you did not clarify as to the question as to the biggest concerns you have in terms of a business perspective as well as a political perspective. I'm assuming there's a lot of concerns that you might have, which we are willing to address today.
As I mentioned in my starting statement, my biggest concern as of now is walking away from here with a delivery timeline of September of 2024 at latest. And we do have certain incentives we're willing to offer if the delivery were to be done before that. And politically speaking, as is our mutual concern here at the table, is to walk away from this without either party looking bad in the public light, and to potentially have, I'd say, a joint public statement or some sort of resolution mechanism where either party does not end up taking the fall. Because to be very clear, since we are here in the name of transparency, there is an election coming up in October, which is why we are so insistent on the September timeline. And you understand that for us to continue working with the public, we need to show the public some promises. And the only way the public can respond back to us on our promises and on the work we have done is through the election. So we want this done prior to any election timelines. These are our main concerns. That being said, I would just like to ask one question. Do you have the capacity to complete the delivery by 30th of September of 2024?
Yeah, I think you did pose the question of why whether we should invoke the force majeure clause. I think it will be beneficial for us right now to discuss the delivery, and maybe we can pin that topic for later after we do discuss the delivery, because I understand that the delivery is something that is important to both of us. So maybe Alex, you can continue on.
Yes, I very much acknowledge in terms of the political aspect how you were transparent and ensuring that you need this done before the election period, and you mentioned in terms of September 2024, and that is something that is viable from our end as well. What I would like to know is, in terms of this period till September, is there any specific operational standpoints that you are looking into? Is there anything that you would prefer in the time of September?
Yes. So I think we have 2 or 3 points on this, and I'll also let Casey elaborate a little more on the contract aspect. But I think the first thing that we would like is to ensure that the deadline is done by 30th September, and that we want to also let you know that if it were to be done prior to that timeline, we're willing to provide incentives such as reducing the liquidated damages, perhaps with every week earlier that the delivery is done, and also to name you as the most preferred contractor in Virelia to ensure that the unity amongst our 2 parties can be shown to the public, and we can also give you the credit for the good work that you've done till now and that you will continue doing. Beyond that, we also do have concerns about the fire, which is why we would like to have a fact-finding committee by the International Chamber of Commerce come in and potentially help us understand the exact effects of the fire on your supply chain, so that we can assess how much of the LD we can waive off, or what other incentives we can provide to help you speed up this timeline. Casey, you maybe want to elaborate on this?
Right. So Tyler had mentioned about the International Chamber of Commerce, and I will just give you 3 reasons as to why we chose the ICC. And that is because ICC is the most famous or the most business organization internationally which is being recognized for its neutrality and credibility. And with that, we say that ICC would be merely a fact-finding mechanism as to what exactly happened in the fire and whether it can be considered as an excusable delay, so that from our end, we are willing to reduce the liquidated damages and give you more opportunity or a commitment for HelioWave to commit to deliver the rest of the megawatts by the end of September 2024. Now that said, I want to reiterate that ICC is merely fact-finding. They are not, they do not provide legal recommendations or conclusive options to us, but merely we have chosen, or maybe that is an option because they are credible, and that report of ICC would be a defensible basis from our end, because at the end of the day we are answerable to our Auditor General of Virelia. So with that report of ICC, maybe we can give more leeway and reduce the LD from our end. And if you can see in the document that we have given, our proposal number 1 is about the ICC expert verification, and if you see bullet number 2, we would be having all the cost will be borne by us and in its entirety, because it's our requirement that we do get a credible report for the project that force majeure has happened, and in a way we can waive the LD. How does that sound?
Should I take it? I think better. So I did hear you say that if the delivery was accommodated for the 30th of September, you would be providing us, I guess these are options, providing us with incentives or is it and or, I'm not sure, just correct me if I'm wrong.
Let me just clarify on that
yeah.
aspect. So if the delivery, the latest time period we're looking for is 30th September, but if the delivery were done prior to that, say within 2 weeks, so like 15th of September, then we're willing to give you the extra incentives mentioned, which would be lowering of the LD significantly and also the most preferred contractor label.
Okay, understood. So then with regard to the ICC fact-finding mechanism, I think it would be better if, Alex, you take on the delivery aspect and explain to them where we are coming from, and then we can decide with regard to the liquidated damages when we do go into the agenda topic of damages.
Yes, in terms of delivery, and as I heard from you, you do want it by the 30th of September. And as for the transparency, that was similarly to the timeline that we were sticking as well in terms of the 30th September 2024. And that was the assurance that was given to me by my team that the East market will be resumed and the delivery of the system could continue. If that answers your concerns as to the timeline. In terms of the incentives, Tishni, what do you think of these incentives?
Yeah, so like they did mention, if we were able to make the delivery prior to the 30th of September, they would be providing us with incentives like reducing the liquidated damages and naming us the most preferred supplier. However, I think, as you have mentioned, our earliest delivery date is the 30th of September. Would that be all right with you to set the delivery date on the 30th of September?
That would be all right with us. You're saying the earliest would be 30th of September, right?
Yes.
So I do want to then clarify that none of the incentives mentioned for the earlier timeline would apply. We are open to 30th of September being the delivery timeline, but on our end, we cannot have any date later than that. That is the latest we're willing to go. So it would be better or more amenable for us if we were to maybe work out a 1 week earlier timeline potentially, maybe 23rd, something like that, just so we have 1 week accommodated for delays if anything such happens. And with that being said, also we would like to maybe go into the mechanism of how we would make sure that the timeline is stuck to, for which I think Casey can take up one of the ideas that we had, that is proposal number 2 on the document before you, a tripartite commitment agreement. And Casey, maybe you can explain that.
Right. So what the tripartite agreement would be here is that it would involve 3 parties: the Ministry of Energy, ourselves, and HelioWave, that is our contractor, and also the subcontractors that HelioWave has. Now, what this agreement would mean is that since we are looking forward for the delivery to be done in a very stricter or concise timeline, we would want a strict or a written commitment from your end that the delivery would be done and dusted by the end of next month. And for that, what we propose, or to secure this commitment, what we are asking is for an additional bank guarantee that it will be done by the end of next month. However, if it is not delivered by the end of next month, it would be forfeited, and if the contractor fails the commitment. How does that sound?
Just give me a moment to read your proposal.
Sure.
Right. So from what I'm understanding, the tripartite agreement would be executed ideally to establish the commitment to the delivery. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. So I think that is something that we could agree to, because we are committed to
Yeah.
making the delivery on the 30th of September. Alex, what do you think?
Yes, in terms of the concern that Taylor mentioned, having, if it's possible, to have a week earlier, as based on the information that I've been provided, as I mentioned earlier, and by the team, they've given me reassurance that the East market could provide it on the 30th of September as the earliest, since you were able to be fine with 30th September as well. I think that's something we can arrange definitely. As of now, Based on the information that is provided, I do not know as to how we could provide a week earlier. But as soon as I get information, if we are able to resume or like deliver it a week earlier, that's absolutely something we can accommodate. In terms of the proposal 2 that was provided in terms of a written commitment is something I think it's viable from our end.
Would you be open to the bank guarantee as well that we have proposed?
Is this a number? Could you just elaborate a bit more on this bank guarantee?
Yes, so that is simply to ensure that since you have mentioned that 30th September is the earliest you can accommodate, which is the latest date for us, we are still worried about certain delays because you must understand that the ministry has seen almost a 5-month, 6-month delay since the original delivery timeline period. And to then come with such a solid number or solid date, which we don't have any leeway on or no backing on, we would certainly be walking away with a level of uncertainty, due to which we would require an additional bank guarantee provided, which if any delays take place would be forfeited to us to make sure that we can cover the costs. Now, that being said, I do understand that that would be potentially more financial burden on you, and we do not want to do that, and we want to give you the best possible outcome. So we're willing to maybe work out another arrangement, maybe a technological alternative or something as such in place of the bank guarantee, but we do require a certain extra penalty or a certain extra interest if we were to give you 30th September as the deadline.
I understand where you're coming from, and I understand that due to this delay, I heard you say that the 30th September deadline is your latest, whereas that's our earliest. But I think Alex can assure you that 30th is something that we can definitely do, and I think a commitment to this can be established from the written agreement, the tripartite agreement, and I think as a basis, I think that's a very good foundation for us to build up on. But with regard to the bank guarantee, can you explain to me how specifically this is going to help you with regard to the cost? Because are you financially, is there any financial deficit that you do need this extra cost covered for? Would you just be able to give me some clarity with regard to that?
Yes, so I would like to say that due to the sort of delay that has taken place, our budget is constrained. And while we are not seeking an explicit damage, as of now, we do want to make sure that we come out of this with some level of liquidity and with some level of optics that this has not entirely damaged us. And in a way, having an extra added bank guarantee or a cash compensation would certainly help with that. And it is also an added layer of accountability, as is the industry standard. Generally, in these type of agreements, what Casey explains to me is that a bank guarantee is sort of an extra level of accountability, and it allows us to engage with third parties at contractors' risk, and it allows us to have a level of safety when we talk to parties that are beyond the agreement.
Yes.
Can I just ask one question before you continue? Sorry, Alex. We have in principle agreed to the tripartite agreement, and I hear you saying that this bank guarantee is also encourages accountability, just like the tripartite agreement. What do you see as the difference there in terms of accountability? Because if accountability is assured from the tripartite agreement, why would you need the additional accountability? Just if you can provide me with some clarity there.
I think Casey can also corroborate this. The agreement basically facilitates a communication, and the bank guarantees accountability. Maybe you want to substantiate?
Let me just simplify it here. So the bank guarantee would be kind of like a penalty. How does that sound? So we would have an agreement which would be just for a month, and if the delivery is not delivered by the end of 30th of September of 2024, we will impose a penalty here, and the penalty being the bank guarantee. Now, the bank guarantee gives space for us to ensure that there is an accountability taken from your end, and that we've been transparent enough to go back and answer to our Auditor General as to why we've given HelioWave an extension of time, even though March was the deadline. Does that explain and make it clear?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of a penalty, this issue that has taken place in terms of the delivery is not something which I personally have in control. It's something that is external, and in terms of accountability, I understand why it's a concern, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm not willing to be seen negatively in terms of public perception, and in terms of a penalty for something that is not within my control is not something that I could agree on. But in terms of any support that you need, Taylor, you mentioned about a technical support that we could provide. Is there anything we can help them with in terms of technical support? But I would like to hear what my counsel have to say as well.
Yeah, I think just to add on to what Alex has mentioned, as I also stated earlier, Alex is not ready to accept any contractual or legal liabilities at this negotiation, because like we did mention, this delay that has happened is not within Alex's control. This is something that is purely external due to external reasons, and not something that Alex foresaw or that Alex could have controlled in any manner. And we too are dealing with the information that we have received from our manufacturing partner and also from the East Asian facility. So I think when you phrase the bank guarantee as a penalty, it's a big word yet to be used, I think, in a negotiation setting when we want to foster collaboration and encourage that, because we really do want to help you. So I think having said that, we can move on to talking about the technical support that you did mention. Would that be all right?
So, Casey, tell me this. Is there any way that we can maybe rephrase the penalty so that we can come out in a better light? Is there
Right.
anything we can do there?
Right, it was just to simplify. I get that penalty is a huge word to throw off in a negotiation session like this. But however, I believe Taylor did say that we can trade off the yes, we can trade off the bank guarantee if we get probably an upgrade in the technological system that we already have here. Isn't that right, Taylor?
Yes. So, I just wanted to confirm with Casey if financial liability can be done away with, because at the end of the day, administration and government loves having cash and liquidity as one of the penalties. And I'm sure you understand that commercially we're looking to have all the possible backups we do. But we also understand your interest in not accepting a contractual liability, and we understand how this might look, how the optics might look. So if a bank guarantee were to be done away with, then we would require an upgrade of the PV panels to a product that I hear about, which is your Heliox panels, a newer type of panel that you're providing. If we can get an upgrade for the remaining systems as of now, we'd be willing to do away with the bank guarantee. That being said, if there were to be a delay, instead of a financial penalty or instead of a financial interest charge, we would require you to do the upgrade on the previous systems free of cost. Depending on what the guarantee or what losses we've faced, we can equate that, and that is how many tranches we would upgrade, or you would upgrade free of cost if there was a delay. How does that sound?
Would it be okay if I took this? Yeah.
Go ahead,
So I
Taylor.
think with regard to this bank guarantee, like Alex has mentioned, with the financial context that we are also dealing with, I think it would be best if we do eliminate that from today's negotiation. But I think this upgrade is something that we can really consider. And having said that, with regard to the agenda topic of delivery, I think we have come to agreement that the 30th of September is something that we from our side as HelioWave can deliver the product by the 30th of September, and I'm hearing you agreeing to that. So I think that is a good start and a good foundation for this negotiation. I think that's something that we should celebrate moving forward,
Definitely.
having agreed to something like that. So I
Um,
can feel that we're moving on to the
Can I just get one small clarification? I do want to just emphasize a position and understand that, and make sure that this is not just an agreement in principle, but rather also an agreement in the entirety, that we're agreeing to the 30th September timeline if the upgrades of the Heliox panels are done, and that if you agree to the free of cost upgrades in case of a delay. Is that a contingency that you agree to, and then we can maybe bridge the gap?
Yes,
Maybe you can take it, yeah.
Yes. In terms of the the tripartite agreement, that is very much understandable and something we can agree on. But in terms of the Helio Wave X, there is approvals that is been given on my board from to me, and in terms of agreeing it as a trade-off is such a, I would say, a huge thing in terms of giving a Helio Wave X. But in terms, I know the concern is as to the delay that you're worried about, and if there is a delay that you want some type of
Yeah, I just want to emphasize again that the contract was started in August of 2023, and our understanding is that PV cells require a huge amount of maintenance and a huge amount of cleaning, and hence they tend to also, I would say, go out of commission quite fast. And so we do not want that by the time the final tranche of this agreement is completed, that the original tranches as well start conking off. And we want to have a certain amount of understanding that we want to make sure that all the tranches are able to work together so that we fulfill the entire quota of the electricity we've promised to the public. That is the reason why we believe that having the newer panels will help us have that guarantee that the panels are not going to conk off quite as fast, because I think it's been, an entire year, and PV panels take quite a bit of maintenance, which is our understanding, and the maintenance cost is quite huge as well.
Yes, it is very valid concerns as to why you're having this, but I want to assure you that these delays is based on the information that is given. There is reassurance that this could be done latest 30th September, which is the latest, earliest for us, and then latest from your end. And in terms of a penalty or a trade-off is something rather
I think we agreed that we are going to exclude that from today's negotiation. I hope that clarifies that. Okay, perfect. I think with regard to the upgrade, maybe you can, I think from what you were discussing with me earlier, that's something we can consider. Am I correct, Alex?
Yes,
yeah.
yes. In terms of Helio Wave X, as you mentioned, being all transparent, that is something that I had with me that I would want to propose as well. I just needed a reassurance as to a certain amount of concerns that I had as well, and glad that I was able to clarify your concerns as well. In terms of Helio X, it is, as you mentioned, it is a more efficient system in terms of an upgrade according to the VP, and it provides more of a 12% more efficiency as the usual system that we had. And Jordan, do you want to elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I think before we get into the nitty-gritties of the upgrade, which is something that we can definitely consider from what Alex has told me previously, maybe we can have a bit more clarity as to what exactly this upgrade is going to do for you, so we can get the bigger picture and we can cater our proposals to you.
Definitely, sure. So I'm just gonna I've worked in this industry for a bit now, and this is just my rudimentary understanding of how photovoltaic cells work, but I'm sure that you can maybe clarify further for me, since the production of this is entirely your science. But what my understanding is that first of all, the efficiency on photovoltaic cells can be quite low when there are cloudy conditions or when there are other overcast conditions, and we want to first of all maximize that sort of efficiency, because these are for rural communities and we do not want them to have to give them a solution and then that not work out in every single weather situation. So first of all, we believe that an upgradation to a new panel that has more efficiency would help that output and would help the people of Virelia get the best possible outcome from these tranches being delivered. Beyond that as well, as I mentioned before, that in 2023 was when we made this contract, and the first two tranches that were delivered have had quite some time on them, and they've been sort of just, been there without any upgrades as of yet. And our understanding is that photovoltaic cells tend to conk off quite quickly, because it requires a huge amount of cleaning, it requires a huge amount of maintenance, and even with that, they run out quite fast. So just to make sure that when all the tranches are delivered, the entire project functions at the optimum level of quota that we had promised to the people, we would like an upgrade of the panels, because we just want to make sure that none of the tranches are functioning on outdated panels and they all can meet the efficiency that we have promised. Does that clarify for you why we're seeking that upgrade?
Yes, thank you so much for that. Taylor, do you want me to explain about the upgrade, or maybe you can do that because...
In terms of the upgrade, as I mentioned earlier, as the concerns that was mentioned in terms of the photovoltaic solutions, Helio X is actually something we've actually done in terms of upgrading to ensure there is efficiency and smoother running in terms of providing electricity. Of course, in terms of rural areas, we want to ensure that the best is given from our end as well, because sustainability is something we value in our business. And in terms of what Taylor mentioned as the concerns, that he's right, and that has been fixed, and that is the upgrade as to Helio X that we are bringing out. Jordan, you want to add anything?
So with regard to this upgrade, this is something from what you did discuss with me earlier. This is something that we can offer, but this is dependent on the liquidated damages that you did bring up earlier. So I think it would be a very fluid agenda where our delivery would be the delivery date of 30th September, as long as that is agreed upon, and that I think we can in principle agree to the upgraded product, provided that you are open for a liquidated damages compensation in a non-cash option, so that ideally this upgrade, as you mentioned, has been mandated to HelioWave as an alternative to the liquidated damages. Is that something that you are willing to consider?
So Casey, I think the second item on our agenda was the PR solutions, right? But since both of us require PR on either end, do you think that it'd be smart to maybe move on to liquidated damages right now?
Right. Taylor, that would be right. And Jordan, as you stated, we are open to discussing about the liquidated damages and how much leeway we can give from our end. But now that we can see we are in a paucity of time, now principally we have agreed that the contract would be done and dusted by end of next month, and to secure that commitment we will have a tripartite agreement in place, and we are not talking about any bank guarantee or penalty. It's just a commitment to ensure that we have daily reports or daily communication within us. As you can see, I believe in proposal number 3, we will have enhanced monitoring mechanisms in place to see to it that it is done by the next month. Now moving on to the liquidity damages, Taylor, why don't you take that up and look as to how it looks with us?
So I think I want to preempt a question on your end, but I'm sure that you're wondering why we imposed or sent you a notice of 7.2 million in terms of liquidated damages. Is that something you want me to answer?
I think that's a big concern.
Yes, we actually did have concerns as to how the 7.2 million was arrived. If you could give a breakdown, would be great.
I understand. So I think I'll just circle back to the fire for a bit, because it sort of contextualizes as to how we came to this number. The fire was informed to us informally through industry briefings, and due to the fact that we didn't receive a formal notice from you, as well as force majeure was not invoked, I think we were kind of left on our own to crunch the numbers as to when the contract would come back on track. So once in January the fire happened, I think we waited up until May to try and figure out that when would the contract come back on track, because 31st March was the agreed upon delivery timeline. So in those 2 months, between 31st of March till when we issued the notice in May, our risk management committee of Project Sunlight had to come up with sort of a rough estimate on how these type of fires affect supply chains in photovoltaic production factories, and how it would potentially affect your supply chain, since we were receiving no communications from you. And the number that they came up with was that it would take about 10 months or more. And hence we asked for the entirety of the 7.2 million. That being said, I do understand that you have come with the number of 30th September 2024, hence why we're willing to reduce the liquidated damages significantly. So do you have a number that you're potentially seeking?
Jordan, you want to elaborate on
Yeah,
that?
I think more than just the actually first what you're suggesting is that the 7.2 figure that you did initially tell us is an estimated value for a 10-month delay.
Yes.
Am I right? Yes. But as of now, since 30th September is the delivery date that we have agreed on, that would be a 6-month delay, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, so we're definitely willing to adjust the liquidated damages accordingly, because our main aim is to just get the tranche delivered on time. Casey, you have anything to add on that, actually?
No, not as of right now.
Yeah.
I think the main question here is, are you willing to take a non-cash option instead of the liquidated damages?
What would you say about that, since you are the legal advisor of the ministry? What do you think about that aspect?
We would love to hear as to what kind of non-cash offers that we are looking here. Then maybe we can discuss about how much we can waive the LD from our side.
As of what my counsel said, this was the alternative given to me by my board in terms of Helio X, which will ensure 12% efficiency that I mentioned as earlier. This would result in an increase in terms increase almost to a $14.4 million increase for you, which will give an actual final return on the project of 134 million return on investment, and that's more than what is originally agreed upon, and that's what the alternative, the non-cash benefit, would provide in terms of long term. Jordan, you want to add anything
Yeah,
to that?
Just so I got
Yeah.
that right, can you please just repeat the numbers so I can maybe
Yes.
crunch them as
Maybe
well?
I can
Yes,
do that.
you can
for
break
Yeah,
the
please do.
time down.
Yes. So ideally, the upgrade of Helio X, the product Helio X panels, is 12% more efficient than what it was earlier. So the earlier contract value is 120 million USD, 120 million, and a 12% increase of efficiency would mean that your product or the system that we have offered you would increase in value there would be a 12% increase in the value, which would be a 14.4 million increase in the value, which would bring down the entire cost of the, or rather the the value of the system to 134.4 million. So ideally, we would be willing to, as you did mention, we would be willing to give you this additional upgrade at no cost.
No cost.
Yes. So you would ideally be having the 120 million worth system or asset at the cost, at a value of 134.4 million.
Okay, so my understanding is that due to the sorry, excuse me, due to the 12% efficiency, the cost of the Helio X panels as well has a 12% difference from the original panels. Is that?
The value of it has increased.
Yes, okay. So I think I'll just go over the commercial aspect as to why we may not be amenable to that. And we do have some alternatives that I think Casey can mention after I explain as to why we might not be agreeable to that. So our understanding here is that even though there is a 12% efficiency, the maintenance cost of the cells and then the operational costs of providing this electricity house to house, doing the wiring, and all of these other aspects do cut into the profits that will be made by the 12% efficiency, because we do have to maintain these new cells, and that is not an aspect that's being taken up by HelioWave, but rather by us. Also, our understanding would be that a 12% efficiency is not in 100% on all 365 days, right? That would be like an average of an increase in efficiency. It wouldn't be a guaranteed efficiency, which means that we also don't have a guaranteed 12% increase in our profit. So I would say that we are not agreeable to the fact that there is actually an increase of 12% in the asset value. And again, like I mentioned, the panels are getting outdated due to the fact that they were installed, the original 2 tranches were installed, over a year ago, some around that timeline. which is why I think that using the HelioX panels as a contingency to the deadline, and also that if you could provide that upgrade for the remaining systems, would certainly help balance the fact that there is a delay on your end and it has caused our systems to conk off. But we do understand liquidated damages being that high is a concern for you, and I think Casey can give you some alternatives on our end.
Thank you, Taylor, for that. So I believe now our priority would be to upgrade the HelioX panels, and not for the not about talking about the increase in the efficiency and look forward to other numbers. But however, what we are probably asking for is an extra 10 megawatts in capacity as bonus.
So I think a more fixed way of making sure that we get a return on investment, and a more certain way, would not be by measuring the efficiency of the panels, but to have an increase of the capacity, which, as Casey said, would be 10. Or do we have any alternatives as well?
Or maybe we can look into cash compensation as in such, and we can maybe look at how the liquidated damages in number would look like. Maybe we can settle from maybe bringing the 7.2 million US dollars to that of 5 million. How does that work?
Yeah, because we did mention we're willing to bring an ICC fact-finding committee, and that would entirely be to make sure that the losses you've suffered in the supply chain are accommodated into the LD. And I know cash is something that you're not looking at, but this is what would be agreeable for us. Maybe we can find some middle ground here.
Okay, there is a lot of information going back and forth. Just to clarify, so one option that you do have is to reduce the 7.2 million liquidated damages to 5 million.
Yes.
That is contingent on the ICC fact-finding mechanism that you proposed.
5 million is our upper limit. Of course, if the fact-finding
It depends on
mechanism,
that. Okay.
they say that the losses are higher, then we can see what the lower limit for us is.
Then you are not agreeable to the upgrade because of the maintenance cost. Am I right?
We are agreeable to the upgrade. We're not agreeable to it in place of an LD. The reason why we're agreeable to the upgrade, I've mentioned, we want the systems to work for a long enough amount of time. But I don't think using the upgrade to justify the fact that we've had a profit increase would be a solid way to do so commercially. And a more solid way would be an increase of the capacity rather.
Okay. Yes, and also the alternative for the liquidated damages that you did suggest is an increase in capacity of 10 megawatts.
Yes.
Okay, so just a quick question. You did mention that you are concerned about the profitability of the system, but like we came to the negotiation with our main stakeholder in mind,
Yeah.
which is the citizens. So sorry, I'm just because this is negotiation, I want to encourage yeah, okay.
I just want to clarify, I didn't mean the profitability of HelioX is less or so. We think that it's not a solid enough number for us. Please continue.
Yeah, I think we could avoid any interruptions while
Yes,
each
yes,
other are
please
speaking,
continue.
and we can take turns, because this is after all negotiation. We have to be transparent with each other. So my initial question is, what does this profitability look like in terms of the system? Because our main service that we provide is these systems to provide the energy for citizens who are not as financially viable as others, and this mainly comes down to the affordability. So can you just give me some insight onto what profitability here looks like for you?
I understand that your interest is the citizens. I think we've heard that in the opening statement, and I'm so glad that we have the common sentiment on that aspect. Now, when I say profitability, what I mean here is, you've told me that due to the 12% efficiency, there is a direct 12% increase in the asset value of 14.4 million, which is how the liquidated damages are cancelled out. I would say that commercially, we would disagree on this aspect, due to the fact that a simple 12% increase in efficiency does not always equate to a 12% increase in profits, and that is not a valid way to cancel out the liquidated damages in our opinion. And a more solid way to do that, if you were to look at output terms entirely, is the megawatts or a cash compensation, which we have now slipped down from 7.2 million to 4 million, with more potential to slip down depending on the ICC fact-finding report. So I'm simply saying that we understand and we appreciate your offer, but we disagree with the direct profit-making numbers that you have provided us being quite as high as you've mentioned, due to our operational costs and maintenance cost of the photovoltaic cells cutting into that.
What does your maintenance cost look like with regard to the system?
I mean, it's hard to say as of now, since that is a very long-term cost, and we're looking at this to function in the long term. But I would say that banking on a 12% increase of the asset value for us as of now is not realistic, and we are more willing to take on an increase of the capacity.
Right, now to just add on to that, and why VSTC or the ministry is pushing for an upgradation of the Helio X is because when we entered into the contract as of 2023, there was no introduction or there was no specific upgradation as such of Helio X. But then we see that there have been something after March of 2024. We see there was something of newer panels of something called Helio X, and which came to our attention lately, and hence the reason why we are asking for the upgradation. And now that we are coming up with the ICC, and that it would be contingent on the 10 megawatts bonus plus, or maybe, or what we are asking for is we are willing to reduce the liquidated damages from that of 7.2 now that to 4 million of US dollars.
Yes, Jordan, since there is a lot that is put out on the table, I think we could benefit from a break to gather our thoughts and think about what was given to us on the table and resume back.
Sure.
Definitely, I think we'll take a break as well.
Assessors, if the other participants want to take a break as well, they could leave the room. Yeah. So participants, you can leave the room with me, and we'll be counting 5 minutes from down here. Thank you. The time won't be paused from here. You can leave out now.
Thank you for the break. I think it gave us time to gather our thoughts, and I think me and my counsel spoke and came to a good news, hopefully. Jordan, you want to elaborate on that?
Before we did go into the break, what you did mention is that the upgrade of the 12%, the Helio X, the Helio X panels is not something that you would be willing to agree to as an alternative to the damages, the liquidated damages.
Yes.
But you do ideally want to get that upgrade from us. That's what I'm hearing. So maybe for now we can pin it and discuss it at our next negotiation, given that we don't have time, because this is what we have been mandated to resolve to as an alternate to the liquidated damages. But in addition to that, we have also been mandated to give a bonus of 5 megawatts, and I hear that you did suggest a 10 megawatt bonus capacity. But we also have 2 million that we can give you as a cash settlement. So ideally here, the 5 megawatts out of the 10, we would be willing to give you 5 megawatts out of the 10 megawatts that you do require right now, and the remaining 5 megawatts would come to a value of 6 million. So I think giving you the so I think instead of the remaining 5 million, we would be ideally giving you the 2 million cash settlement.
Okay. So I'm very glad to hear that you've come back with a lot more clarity, and we also are happy to hear about the sort of offers that you have in place, and I think that definitely gives us a meeting ground. That being said, I just want to touch on the joint media statement, because I understand that PR is one of our common grounds, right? So in the interest of PR and to make sure that the deal being done here looks good in the press, we do understand that potentially lower cash settlement or a completely cashless option might come off better, which is why we're willing to accept a range of an extra 10 megawatts to 5 megawatts bonus capacity. The range, depending on the ICC fact finding, will equate the value of the LD, how much the decrease is, and based on that we can give you a number as to what the bonus capacity would be. But we are seeking this in place of the LD if we were to go completely cashless. We do understand that on your end there is a chance of a cash compensation, and maybe Casey can give a number on our end of how much we're willing to dip down to. What do you say?
Yes. For the liquidated damages, how about we stick with 3 million now that we have come down from 7.2 to that of 3 million?
This would be an OR offer. If you give us the extra bonus capacity, then we would do away with the cash compensation. If you give us the cash, we'd do away with the extra. So that's up to you.
I think we do have only 3 minutes on the clock, so I think there's a lot more that we do need to discuss in this negotiation, and I can see that we are really we're about to reach a common ground, and I think that's something that we can celebrate going forward from where we did arrive and come to this negotiation. So because for the sake of time, let me just provide a quick summary, because obviously we can continue in our next negotiation with all the details with regard to the settlement. So with regard to the delivery, we did come to the agreement that the delivery would be made on the 30th of September, and that would be accompanied by the tripartite agreement that includes the ministry, Helio Wave, and our subcontractors. And this would be a written commitment that also I think is important to you, and also shows you the reassurance that we can give in terms of this written commitment to delivering the products by the 30th of September. So I think that is a good foundation that we did arrive at this negotiation. Moving on from that, we did discuss the damages and all. There was a lot of information and a lot of proposals brought in, but I think there is definitely a lot more to discuss. But we did discuss about the upgrade, which is something that we can pin for our next negotiation to discuss further. But like I did clarify earlier, this is not something that this is something that we have been mandated to provide as an alternative to the damages. So definitely we can discuss that later on. And also with regard to the 10 megawatt bonus capacity, we are able to provide you a bonus capacity of 5 megawatts, and also an additional cash settlement of 2 million. And I did hear a few settlements coming in from you, but this is maybe just something that you can think about later and come into our next negotiation, and we can talk about that later. And you did have some concerns about the PR and where we can reduce the costs on that as well. But I think, again, because we are short on time, we would have to discuss that at our next negotiation. And overall, I think this is a very fruitful first negotiation, and we can definitely continue later on.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you so
Taylor
much,
and
yeah.
Casey. We are looking forward to our next session and hoping we can come to a common ground to
Yeah.
give the community of Virelia what they deserve.
Thank you so much. I think we'll have Casey also just summarize the agendas on our end really quick because we are on a shortage of time.
Right, thank you for all of that. Now we've agreed that by the end of next month, we're going to have the deliver done and that the contract would be done and dusted. Now to set up the next agenda and how we are going about it in the next session, we do understand that we haven't touched upon the public relations strategy at all. We'll have to look into how the interviews or articles or commercial events and how we are going to enhance each other. The second agenda would be to review how the monitoring mechanisms work on how well the tripartite agreement is working for both in our ends. And lastly, one of the agenda that can be discussed in the next session is about the upgradation in HelioX. That would be contingent upon how the ICC report is coming up. Does that sound good?
Yes, I think that does sound good for further discussion. Thank you so much for coming for this negotiation.
Thank you.
Okay, then we leave the room now.
both of you put it on the table for all of us to understand what the real dispute was between the two parties. And I must say that you all exhibited a great degree of argumentative talents, even though this was a negotiation. Negotiation is where both parties walk away happily, having reached a consensual agreement, and we could see nuances of such approaches evident in what you did this morning, and I'm quite fortified that we will be sending to the world great legal minds with this kind of cross-border interactions. And as I walked in and I started listening to I think a little better of the legal profession today for the two of you. Come to the main dispute between the two of you, right? I could see the toughness, I could see the resilience in the way you all were standing for your own side. I could see the limitations and the questions as to why force majeure was not invoked, and the explanations that came from this side. At the end of the day, I must say, well, I must sum up what I have understood from what has gone on. You have agreed on the delivery date, right, 30th September. You have agreed on a tripartite agreement. That signifies a written commitment. You have also interposed the mediation of an ICC panel, right? I do not know the mandate of the ICC to do that, right? An ICC, of course, it has got its great reputation as a dispute settler, and I have myself been a participant in Council for Sri Lanka in a number of ICC arbitrations. Whether they could come down and do a factual assessment of the damages, well, that's a matter that you explored. Well, if there is support for that, well, that innovation is something that we could explore. So we were very clear on the delivery date. You were, I of course became very clear on the upgrade that you wanted, and they agreed. But I'm not too sure whether the non-cash settlement that they were seeking has been finally agreed upon by you definitively in this negotiation. I'm not walking away clearly on that question, because there was this discussion that was going on between the two of you on the quantum, 7.2 million, and then you brought it down, and then now you still need ICC to quantify and then agree upon a final cash settlement. It looks like this team still needs cash settlement, whereas you went to the extent of offering non-cash settlement. So on that point, it looks like negotiation has not ended today. It's going to be another round of negotiations. Well, in alternative dispute resolutions, this has been the pattern, right? There have been too numerous occasions on which this takes place. So we will not be there, but you will carry on, and then I hope that you will reduce your contentious areas to a minimum on that day, and then we'll finally, it'll augur well for the two of you. I also did not hear much about the last part of your consensual agreement, that you all must have a press interview, a joint press interview to minimize the reputational damage that you all may expect to reduce. We didn't see much progress taking place on that. right? But you all must explore that area as well. Based on that, we have assessed you. It was good, and I must thank my fellow assessors who were very, very helpful in assessing the talents of both of you. And it's good enough a start, in my view. And I'm welcome to Sri Lanka. And I'll be in Visakhapatnam now. Come next Wednesday, I'm there, right? And it's a university, right?
Yes,
Right. And so it's great the two teams took part with such vigor and vitality, and wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I'll now give it over to my good friend.
Thank you, sir. So I think, first of all, I agree with everything his Honour said. I think it's no mean feat to get into the final. It's quite an achievement. And I think what we saw today was a very evenly matched competition, where things were just in different shades, really, of how things should be done. So I'm going to give a couple of comments just about the overall conduct of it and what I look for in a negotiation like this. I mean, the first thing I would say up front is you were well prepared. You both had read the briefs in detail, so you understood the positions that you had, and you prepared a strategy around that, and that was clear. And as His Honour said, it was very clear to us where your red lines were. It was very clear about it, very clear the ZOPA that you wanted to play within in your own mindset, so that was very clear to us. The way I would just look at it is maybe in a couple of headings. The first one is opening statement. I think the opening statement from both sides was really good. You took control as a requesting party and laid down some ground rules, and you then gave both opening statements, which were very clear. They kind of laid out, in some ways, the tone of how you should do that. What I thought was very interesting is that when you're doing, and I have spoken to both of you before in previous rounds, but what is interesting is this issue of influence and how the tone that you use. So for me, the second point would be about the tone, character, trust building. And you kind of set that in the initial opening statements. You in particular on this side were using a lot of emotion, and then Jordan was using the logic. So emotion and logic on your side. On your side it was more logic in terms of the opening statement, a little bit of emotion, but well considered. I mean, influence is really about either socializing ideas, using logic, or using emotion. So both of you used that in your statement. The tone and character is really about trust building, is how you build the trust. And so I have one sort of major comment here, and it's really about language when you're building trust. You have to be very careful the language you use, okay? So you used a lot of emotion on this side. On your side, on the responding party side, there are a couple of times when you said things which, for the future, they're throwaway lines which you have to be very careful about. So for example, when Jordan was giving the ground rules, your comment that came back was, "Thank you very much indeed for your elaborate explanation." It's very condescending. Even within the context, even if you're not a native English speaker, you might not have meant that. You may have meant that she's being very thorough. So thank you very much for a very thorough explanation would have been better. So wording is quite careful. When actually then you use I timed you exactly the same amount of time to give your counter view to that as well. So something I'll just be a little bit careful on. And the other thing was just at the very end, having done a really good session, a really good negotiation, you then kind of put your marker down as an offer and said, "That's up to you." In other words, take it or leave it. Very careful with words like that, because that's the impression you get, it's take it or leave it. So trust building is very important. I think that's one thing. Teamwork. Now this is something where I really commend both of you, because the teamwork was excellent on both sides. I think particularly you guys were very good in teamwork. You worked together very seamlessly. That was very good. You guys were very good. I think the only comment I would make from the client's perspective is you did put a lot, and I've said this to you before, so you've got the client is the boss, okay? And the counsellor is the magician that pulls a rabbit out of the hat whenever they need the advice and the expertise, okay? And this is what we're finding on this side a little bit more. The boss was advocating a little bit, so pushing a bit too much towards the counsellor, and the counsellor was picking up a lot of the burden. There's no doubt you were in charge as a decision maker, that's fair enough. But I think there was almost a little bit of an unfair burden on Jordan as the council. But teamwork generally was both very good on you. Options and generating options. You have to compromise in the options, and I think you were too hardball in some respects. You were fixated on this 10 megawatt thing for a while, when of course in your CI actually says 5. And if you push too hard for that, you're not going to get a solution. So there has to be some more compromise, I think, on that side there. I think whether it was a tactic or not, I don't know, but you prevaricated quite a lot. So at the very beginning, you could have said some of these options could have come up much quicker. I think you held back too long, and it sort of delayed what would have been a more fruitful discussion, I think. So just both of you be very careful of that. Don't push too hard, and don't prevaricate. I mean, if you're buying for time, there was one time when you had a reading pause, when you looked at this and you read it through. That's a good idea, because obviously it's new information, and that's fine. But there are other times when you were just asking lots of questions when actually not necessarily, there was no necessarily a good answer to those questions. Okay. I think also in terms of when you're compromising, contradictions as well. So you were talking a lot about the press statement and having to make a joint press statement, and it would look bad if there was too much liquidity on there. And then you used to write 7.2 million, then 3 million. And so what's all that about? You know, you wanted to achieve a result, and that to me was a little bit just pushing it just a little bit too far. Whereas it contradicted what you were talking about, the press statement. I think on trust side as well, and I don't think you came back enough on this, you raised the issue about the ICC. To me, that's a lack of trust. I don't trust you, so I'm going to bring the ICC in. But you should have also hammered back on that and said, hang on, don't you trust us? Okay, so they're not wrong to put options on the table. And this is a really well thought through piece of paper. It's very good. But you also need to counteract that and say, hang on a minute, don't you trust us? I mean, the whole thing has been about trust and focusing on the people. And then finally, I think with solutions, we got to a stage where we actually had a good stage to move forward, but I would be slightly concerned about the work that I have to do to build that trust again in that next negotiation between both parties. So that what we basically got an agreement in terms, if I'm correct, is we got definite date of the 30th of September, absolutely. We definitely got the tripartite on the table. You would put an offer in for 2 million and 5 megawatts. You wanted 3 million and 10 megawatts. So that would have been, but you didn't need to have gone to that stage, at that stage. Yeah, no, I understood that, yeah, exactly, I understood that. But what I'm saying is that you could have actually compromised a bit more, and then the next stage would have been a simple ratification than that. I'm not saying it's wrong, it's a strategy. And you follow that strategy, and you follow your strategy brilliantly. I can see, each move, I can see it very clearly in my mind, is what you were trying to do, which is very good. But overall, I thought really, really good. I mean, really tremendous round, actually, and very, very evenly matched. So well done to both of you. Patrick.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on an outstanding round. I think both sides acquitted themselves quite well. You created a collaborative environment conducive to a mutually beneficial resolution. I think both sides had a realistic appraisal of your BATNA. Really, litigation wasn't in your interest. A negotiated settlement or agreement obviously was the best alternative. In terms of a ZOPA, I think you had an intersection in terms of time. Delivery was paramount for you. It was also in your interest to avoid litigation or the liquidated damage penalty. And the second, I think, area of ZOPA was the LD, or liquidated damages. In that regard, I think you had some creative options. Perhaps there could have been a little more brainstorming to try to see what your trade-offs were in terms of how you could satisfy damages, how you could provide trade-offs for them. I endorse my colleagues' statements. It's kind of easy for me to be a Monday morning quarterback and second guess you. You all are obviously in the trenches, and you came up with a strategy, and I think you executed it well. The concept of anchoring, you came out early and said, you know, this is the date we have to have. Alternatively, you could have said, you know, you're late, and you could have emphasized maybe more of the harm in your opening statement and put the onus on them as to a delivery date. And their earliest would have been the 30th, which would have coincided with your latest. And then you could have picked up on that and said, well, that would be the absolute latest, and then try to trade that for more value. Your strategy, I think, was to come out and try to create incentives to get them to agree to the 30th, whereas I think you had leverage over them already, and that you didn't have to put that on the table quite so early. But as I say, it's easy for me to second guess you, and it was a good strategy regardless of how you sequence the events. So your carrots and sticks, obviously the liquidated damages. I liked your attempt to create value with the non-cash option, the upgraded panels. You obviously anticipated it and said that increase in wattage doesn't necessarily increase profitability. So I thought you had a really robust exchange there, and very impressive from a negotiation point of view. Again, you might have used your liquidated damage card to a greater extent and kept that in abeyance and said, we'd be willing to waive it, but we definitely have to make sure the 30th, you have to adhere to that. And, but we also want more value, and then try to eke out a little bit more. But I think you did a really good job. You explored the possibility that it was part of your ZOPA, the increase in megawatts, how to trade off cash, or if you could get cash. So very creative, very interesting, captivating. And as I've said in a number of the other sessions, I always learn something from you all, and so this was no exception. And in closing, I will say, as I've always said, it's been an honor to assess you. I commend both sides for outstanding performance and wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yenridgen, Honorable Justice Nawaz, and Mr. Mr. Patrick McPhillamy, for your insightful feedback. And thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us today. And for both the teams, a heartfelt congratulations for making it to the final rounds, and thank you so much for taking your time to participate in this competition. Kind reminder that the results will be announced at the closing ceremony. In the meantime, have yourselves a great day, and thank you.